All right, so the open review session for exam number 1 is now officially open. So let me know what you might want to see, any questions that you might have, things that you need to have one more look at in order to make sure that we're all prepared for exam number 1. So if you have any questions, let me know, and I'll be more than happy to help you out.
So our test is Tuesday?
Yep. Okay. Tuesday in class, and you will download it straight off of Canvas and then re-upload it to Canvas as well.
Okay.
So it's almost like an in-class Excel homework assignment.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
And after, in the class after the exam, once everybody's done, I'll take up the exam in class and what I kind of like to call a speed run, okay, which is basically blazing through it as fast as you can kind of do the Excel. And I can get this exam done in about 15 minutes. So that's just a sort of like minimum time to get it done. So if your Excel, depending upon your Excel skills, the actual Excel portion of the exam will maybe take you about 30 minutes to do, okay, which means that you have like 45 minutes to think about it. So it's not a speed exam or anything like that. It's an exam where you can kind of take a look at the question, slow it down. I know that there are, especially when you're dealing with terms, a lot of times there's a temptation to just grab the first term that you see that you can plug into an equation.
Yeah.
And like we mentioned with frequency tables, the column that's labeled as scores is actually possible scores, it's not real scores. So just kind of having that little bit of extra time to say, all right, let me think about this. Let's not fall for that mistake. Okay. Yeah, you'll have that for the exam.
Okay. And so we have to do the sample standard deviation instead of standard deviation for the population.
Yeah.
Right? Yep. Is there any other of the functions that we have to do sample instead of population?
Variance.
Variance?
Yeah.
So we have to be sure to type in var.s.
Well, either var.s or just var.
Okay.
So the default one is sample.
Okay.
Yep.
Is the default standard deviation sample?
Yep.
Okay.
And that's just a nice indication of how often you calculate the sample standard deviation compared to the population.
Yeah.
Honestly, in all the work that I've ever done in psychology, I've never calculated a population standard deviation or variance. I've never touched population data.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't understand why they're different. Why would the sample formula be different than the population?
Oh, the reason they're different is basically variance was defined with respect to a population. So when they were thinking about how do we measure the spread of a population or how do we measure the spread of scores, they came up with this way of measuring it, which they called variance. And what they found was that if you took a sample from your population and calculated its variance using that same formula, it tended to underestimate your population variance. And the reason why we take samples is to understand the population. So that was an issue because what we were taking to understand the population was underestimating what we wanted to know about the population. So it's just because of the nature of variability that was the case for samples. It didn't match up samples and populations. You'll notice that for the mean, we didn't have to do that. You calculate the mean for a population the same way you calculate the mean for a sample. And that's because if you take a whole bunch of samples and calculate their means, they will be reliable estimators of the population mean. Sure, some will be overestimating, but just as many will be underestimating. So on average, they're right there in the middle.
Yeah.
The same is not true of variability, and that's why we have the correction.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay, like, if the test is open resource other than other people,
Yep.
like if I were to pull out my phone and like use my calculator or something.
The only thing that is not allowed is phones,
Okay.
and that's just because,
But I guess if I brought a calculator.
yes, you can bring a calculator, absolutely, and use that to help with anything that you want to do, absolutely. It's just the phones are not allowed just because they're such a easy communication device.
Right.
to use. So that's the only reason, that's the only thing that is not allowed. And that's just a control for the other people. But yeah, if you feel more comfortable at this point doing certain calculations with the calculator, feel free. It's to your advantage to do as much of this exam on Excel, just because in the long run you're going to be way quicker on Excel, and it's just way more accurate with Excel because you don't have to transfer in the numbers into your calculator to do any of the calculations. But really, it's just, can you do the calculations that are being asked for? Can you choose the right formula, do the right calculations for these questions? So if you want to bust out a calculator for some of them, absolutely.
Okay, and then I guess like
I'll come. All right, so I was asked a question about order of operations, specifically how to calculate some of those using the functions in Excel. So let's go to that Excel sheet. And are you working on the practice or the extra practice one? It's a practice one. Okay, so we'll do that one. So no surprise, you will have questions like this where you're being asked to calculate the sum. So summation in Excel, the formula is equals sum, and it very nicely tells you, adds all the numbers in a range of cells. So we put in equals sum, we open parentheses, highlight the scores that we want to calculate, close those parentheses, hit equal, and that's summation in Excel. So pop that into the answer cell, and we see that we have that one correct. So once again, it's that equals sum, open parentheses, highlight those cells, close your parentheses, and you can pop that in using the equal cell, the equal function. And then as always in the exam, feel free to use the copy and paste function as much as you feel comfortable. So we've done the summation once for the X scores. We've done the summation once for the Y scores. We can do the summation again for these Z scores. And then also something to do is, if you do the copy and paste, just because it's at this stage, and you will have time in the exam, as long as you're not trying to learn the material at that time, you will have time in the exam. When you do copy and paste, just, give it a quick little double click just to make sure that you are accessing the cell that you intended to. So if I copied and pasted this equal function that I used to get the answer into the summation of the Y scores into the cell for the summation of Z scores, a quick little double click lets me know that that's wrong. I made an error. It's accessing the wrong cell. So very quickly you can just correct that and then get that all correct. So that was for summation. Do you want to see the other functions as well? All right. So for the other functions here, remember order of operations. You do parentheses, exponents, multiplication and division from left to right, summation with the summation symbol, and then any addition or subtraction. And just a reminder that doing addition and subtraction before doing summation is the number one error that students make on order of operations. So make a note of that, put like red stars around it or whatever you need to, because it is the most common error that students make. All right, so let's do that first one here. So we have the scores -1 in parentheses. So for -1, we just it's just equal and then -1 for -1, and we hit enter, and it calculates the scores -1. So once again, we highlight the scores -1, and once we have all that, we can copy and paste it down. Once again, just a quick little double click on anything that you copy and paste will let you know that it's been done correctly. And then once we're done with what's in the parentheses, notice that the summation symbol is summing what we just did in the parentheses. So we always start off with the whatever our raw scores have been transformed into. That's where we always start the next step. So for the summation, we put equals sum, open parentheses, highlight those -1 scores now. We hit enter, we get 506, pop that into the answer cell with the equals function, and you see we have that one correct. So that was for the scores -1. For the scores squared, we'll just label that to jog our memory. That you put equals, highlight the original score. So we're starting with a new question. The new question is asking us to square the original scores. So do make sure that you are choosing the right cells. And then for the exponents, it's just the little hat shift 6. So it's on the 6 key, you hit shift 6 to get that little hat. And then you just indicate what exponent you want to raise it to. In this case, we're squaring the scores. So once again, equals, highlight your score, shift 6 for the exponent symbol, the exponent that you want to raise it to. And then once you've done that, you can once again just copy and paste it all the way down. Once again, you can just double click on one of your copy and pastes to see that it actually did do what you intended it to do. And then once we're done with exponents, we would do any multiplication and division. There is none. We would do then any summation. There is there. So I'm going to copy and paste the summation that I just did in the previous question because it summed everything in the column above it. And that's what I basically want to do. So I can copy and paste that formula without entering in equals sum once again. However, once again, just a little double click and you will notice that it is accessing what you want it to access. It is summing the scores that you intended it to sum. So then we just pop it into the yellow answer cell with the equals function, and we can scroll on down, and we have that one correct. For the next one, we have 2 times the scores, and multiplication in Excel, we highlight that original score, and then it's the asterisk, so that's on shift 8. And I kind of skipped a step here. Once again, go through the order of operations, get into the habit of doing the steps every single time. So parentheses, no. Going through the checklist. Exponents, no. Multiplication and division, yes. It's 2 times the scores. So we use shift 8 for the asterisk. 2 is what we're multiplying it by. So once again, choose your score. Shift 8 for the asterisk, that's multiplication. 2 is what we're multiplying it by. Once we know what we're doing, we can copy and paste it all the way down. Double click on just one of those to make sure that we're accessing the correct cells. And then once again, we've done our multiplication. Next thing we do is summation. So we have done summation before. So I just copied and pasted that formula. Once again, just double click to make sure that it's accessing the right cells. And once we're confident, we can pop it into the answer cell. And we have that one correct. And then the last one here, this is by far where students make the most errors. This is the one that trips students up the most because for some reason, they tend to do addition and subtraction first, and then they do summation. Probably because summation is new, probably because you've been taught the order of operations without summation so often. However, that is incorrect. You have to follow the order of operations. So for this one, you would go anything in parentheses, nothing. Anything with exponents, nothing. Any multiplication and division, no. Any summation with the summation symbol, yes, there is. It's the sum of the scores. So for that one, we can go here to this initial column and put an equals sum, open parentheses, highlight the scores. So that is the sum of the scores. And then we have to do the sum of the scores minus 1. So if it's just one little step, we can actually calculate that in the answer cell. So we put the sum of the scores, and then we take 1 away from that, and we get 517. So you can see that when you do summation first and then subtraction, you end up with 517. When the subtraction was in parentheses, so you had to do that first, you ended up with 506. Totally different numbers. can make a big difference in the diagnosis or treatment of somebody. So we want to make sure that we are following order of operations so we can do those in the correct order. All right, so that is, those are the functions for this. Addition, subtraction, summation. We didn't see division. Division, if you needed to divide by something, if I wanted the scores divided, where'd it go? Divided by 2, then that would be just that slash. So you would highlight the score, you would put the slash, that's for dividing, and then 2, and that gives you your scores divided by 2. Addition, we didn't do that either, but that's the plus sign. And then during the exam, have these formulas kind of accessible somewhere, just in case you don't remember exactly what they are. Have a sheet that has, summation equals sum, standard deviation equals STDEV. And then even if you prepare that, and let's say that you forget it at home on the day of the exam, this is open anything you want to use, and that does include the internet. So as long as you're not communicating with other individuals, and as long as you don't have the volume on, if you need to watch a YouTube tutorial, I don't recommend it, but you can just very quickly, if need be, jump online and plug in summation in Excel and find your resources on how to do that. This one's a little bit overkill. This is probably a bad example, but how do you write summation in Excel? That would probably be the one. Oh, they're giving you the, So this is not a good example. Maybe put in formula. But anyways, you do have the resource, so you do have those resources. There we go, sum function. So you do have the resource to use that if you want. Again, the only thing that you can't do is communicating with others. No texting, no Skype, no FaceTime, anything like that. But if you do need to use the internet, if you want to Google something, absolutely feel free to do that. That being said, this will take time. Notice that I tried it once, summation in Excel. I had to look through a bunch of links, didn't really find anything that I needed. I tried the next one, summation function in Excel, finally found something, but I would still need to click on that, still read it. I could eventually find the answer, but that's all eating into your time that you have for the exam. So this is the difference between using open resources in a way that is going to benefit you by writing it down, having it somewhere, knowing where you can access the information so you don't have to memorize it, versus trying to learn it for the first time. This is more like trying to learn it for the first time, where you keep clicking on just information, you're just reading through things. It does not seem like the internet in here is very quick either, at least on the Wi-Fi. But you can see here that, very quickly, if need be, you can find that information. Yeah, you're welcome. Other things, just while we're on this topic, other things to remember for this exam is that this is a stats exam, and it's a can you do what we learned in Excel exam, but it's not an Excel skills exam. So what I mean by that is if things go wonky in Excel, call me over. If you do something like, clear your answer cells, and you're like, I don't know what I did, but all my answer cells are gone. Put your hand up, call me over, I'll try to fix it. One of the easiest things is just to Control Z, hold down Control, press Z, it'll undo whatever horrible things you might have done at that point. But definitely, if it's an Excel issue, call me over. So if you have that, that hashtag warning or message, call me over. I'll make it look where you can, so that you can see the entire set of numbers. And don't feel that you need to decide whether or not it's a good idea to call me over. I'll let you know. So if you call me over and say, oh, this is what the issue that I'm having. If it's an Excel issue, I'll fix it for you. It'll take about 5 seconds. If it's an actual part of the statistics question of the exam, or if it's an Excel skill that you need to know, I'll just let you know. I'll just say, well, that is something that you need to, that's a statistics question. So for example, if you write something like equals mean, open parentheses, and you get this hashtag name, if you were to call me over for that, that's part of the course. That's part of what we learned in Excel. That's part of knowing that that's Excel's warning message to you, that you gave it a function that it cannot recognize. So if you were to, ask me, oh, can you fix this? I'll just let you know that's actually part of the exam, so I can't fix that for you. But again, you don't need to make that decision. So don't waste time on the exam thinking, well, is this something I need to fix on my own, or is this something that Dr. Yurichevich will fix for me? Feel free, call me over. I'll take a look at it and I'll let you know so that you can kind of maximize your time on the exam.
On the exam, you're not going to have like the correct boxes where it says if it's correct or not?
No, yeah, that's the only big difference.
Yeah, okay.
So once I grade the exam, I will re-upload them, and then you'll have access to that with the answer boxes. Yep.
Do you typically have homework due like the night before every class?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that was something that I started instituting when I noticed that on days where there was a little bit more due, attendance was way down when I made it due right before class. And especially because it's online, you can be working at home in those last 5 minutes, get it submitted, and then think to yourself, well, I'm going to be late for class anyway, so I'll just skip today. And I just found that it wasn't conducive. So having it due midnight the day before was more helpful.